to be living in some weird times. The other day I was out shopping for a vacuum cleaner and I had to choose between models that were badged V8 and V10. And ironically, the car that I drove to the shop in is this, a red-hot F-Type coupe. What's more ironic is the engine under the hood is a 2-liter 4-cylinder. This is the same Ingenium petrol engine that you get in the XE or the XF sedans, and it has been introduced in the F-Type alongside the new headlamps and a new infotainment system as a part of the car's midlife makeover. The engine also gives this car a new P300 badge on the tail, which comes courtesy of the power output. 300 PS, come on, you get more power than that in a CLF45 AMG, which too runs on a 2-liter engine. And for lesser money, it also gives you 2 extra seats and a boot. In here, the space is only good enough for maybe your morning groceries or maybe a slim laptop bag. So the CLF45 is a more logical choice, right? Wrong. You see, the F-Type is the spiritual successor to the E-Type, the most beautiful car ever built. Of course, this is not that. But if you appreciate beauty and simplicity, then you will realize that the F-Type is actually one of the most beautiful coupes out there at the moment. So taking it to the grocery store or taking it to your office is like being a Samaritan to the onlookers. The smaller displacement means it's less thirsty, so lesser number of fuel stops. It's also cleaner, so lesser CO2 emissions, which means instead of polar bears, this only has butterflies for breakfast. In our tests, the F-Type managed around 6 km to a litre in the city and over 10 km to a litre on the highway. Amazing for a sports car. The magic lies in the fact that the peak torque of 400 Nm is available from as low as 1500 RPM. You will be surprised to see the F-Type puttering around town in 3rd gear most of the times. On the highway, it cruises at 130 km an hour with a little over 2000 RPM. Give it some gas and you will notice that it takes a while to build pace. Shift to the dynamic mode though, and the car becomes quite aggressive. There's a noticeable change in the engine character, and the lovely ZF 8-speed transmission becomes quite responsive, and the car also becomes quite frisky. The F-Type also now gets the Pirelli P300 tyres, again tailor-made for this car. So my natural reaction, knowing the capability of these tyres, is that there'll be amazing levels of grip, which there is, but in typical Jaguar F-Type trademark behavior, it doesn't take too long to break the traction, which is a good thing really, because that is what makes this car so much fun to drive in the first place, and that doesn't change with the 2-liter engine. But the 2-liter engine also ensures that power delivery is linear. There's no overwhelming surge of power, which means that if you were to have a lot of fun, you can do that without soiling your pants. The new engine also has another advantage. You see, body balance or weight distribution was never really a problem for the F-Type. But with this lighter engine, it shaved off 50 kilos off the front end. So with a lighter nose, the turn-ins are quicker and sharper. I like that balance. And I also like how the adaptive suspension has been set up. Potholes are a worry for this car, as you would expect with any sports car. But the F-Type handles undulations, ruts and joints surprisingly well. Unlike a typical sports car though, it doesn't track or change directions unnervingly over the imperfections in the road. For a flat ride through corners, the dynamic mode does stiffen up the chassis, and quite noticeably so. Despite that, the F-Type can arc a clean line even through bumpy corners. A lot of people, including enthusiasts, did complain that the steering response on the Jaguar F-Type is a bit too sharp. If you don't like that, you will probably appreciate it in the new F-Type. Things have been ironed out, the steering response is more linear, it weighs up very nicely, and if you still want the absolute sharpness of the steering that you had on the previous F-Type, all you need to do is chuck the switch into the dynamic mode and it takes care of the rest. Dynamically then, the F-Type is still as impressive or maybe even better than before. Even with the smaller entry-spec engine, there's plenty of enthusiasm in this cat to keep you entertained. Okay, before you complain, let's address the pink elephant in the room, the soundtrack. The Jaguar V8. When I drove the F-Type V8 for the first time, That sound was so emotional, so involving. I wanted to preserve it. I wanted to bottle it and take it home. I can't say the same about this engine, but I have to agree, it's astonishing what Jaguar has managed with the 4-cylinder engine. You still have the trademark crackles and pops that you expect from a F-Type. And then as the speeds rise, there's this grumbly soundtrack that's unique in its own way. Does it match the performance? Does it match the handling characteristics? Does it match the design? Of course it does. Maybe it doesn't live up to your expectations of what a typical soundtrack from the F-Type should be. But then when you look at the price difference between the range-topping V8 and this, I think that sound is not a big price to pay for the kind of equipment and the kind of handling that you get at such an accessible price point. Sure, it lacks the oral drama that you expect from the F-Type, but it seems like a small price to pay when you compare the price and the performance difference between the P300 and the V8. I would go ahead and say that it offers almost 2/3 the performance of the full-fat V8, and that may be plenty for many out there. And that is the point of the F-Type P300, to make this gorgeous art on wheels more accessible for those who appreciate it.